Customer success really has to be methodically built, methodically managed, methodically tuned. And you can, and especially in my opinion, when it comes to the voice of the customer, people skip it all the time. Don't skip that step. Don't skip any steps because, there's lots. We've been at this business now in almost 20 years in customer success. So lots of people have done it. Lots of people have tried it. There's lots of lessons learned that people should be embracing.
Hello and welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I am your host Chandni and we're really glad to have all of you join us today. On this show, we talk to CX and tech experts from around the world. We explore, uncover, and share fresh insights on creating experiences that your customers will remember and look forward to. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code digital CX platform available across 14 channels with 45,000 solutions created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc. magazine, Tech World, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest, Peter Armaly is the senior level marketing and customer success professional at Oracle with extensive experience in working with wide ranging clients of both SaaS and on premise engagement models. He develops programs that involve the skills of CSMS and that drive customer success thought leadership. His goal is to advance the mission of Oracle while studying the industry to distill the findings into strategic positioning papers for the CS leadership team. He's a visionary leader in the customer success industry with solid contributions of quality content, has been listed on the A list for customer success, and has been recognized as one of the top 25 customer success leaders of 2020. Welcome to the show, Peter. We're really
Thank,
excited to talk to you today.
thank you very much, Shandy. Nice to meet you and nice to be on the show.
We're glad. But before we dive into our interview with Peter, don't forget to subscribe to Engati and tap on the bell icon to get exclusive content from thought leaders around the world. So, beginning with the interview, Peter, how do we go about developing a program to update the skills of our customer success managers?
Sure. So the way I see this is you really can't develop a program unless you're clear, unless everyone's in agreement about what the senior executives need, what they're expecting from customer success. So in other words, I believe that a charter for customer success needs to be established and agreed upon. And once that's well understood, then you can kind of look at, okay, what kind of a skills program do we need? We already have perhaps a number of CSMs in the role already. Yeah, and looking forward, any sort of determination of what skills really needs to figure out, do the skills of our people that we have now and how we're planning to hire in the future align with the charter for customer success. So if all the executives agree that customer success needs to focus mostly on adoption versus growth, or mostly on implementation versus so much about renewals, those decisions dictate the skills of the team, and then dictate what kind of skills training programs you put in place. So I see it as kind of, you have to answer that big question first before you can really establish a skills training program.
So that means this is dynamic and would change from business to business?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the maturity or the how long the company's been in business, what kind of segment it's in or market. And also it could change over time too. So if a company establishes customer success, but then evolves over time and the business grows, it could influence the way the leaders think about the skills requirement. And we face that a lot. So we have to constantly kind of tweak our model for hiring new people. There might be kind of a different profile we're looking for, depending on how our kind of charter kind of evolves over time, over the years. So.
Absolutely. So, moving on to our next question, Peter. Why is the Voice of Customer program necessary, and how easy or difficult it is to implement in companies that have a base in customer success?
Sure. I believe voice of the customer program is critical, um, and I don't see how you can. I mean, it's easy to. It's not easy. You can establish a customer success practice, but it's extremely difficult to sustain it and maintain its relevance for customers if you don't have a voice of the customer program in place. I don't see how you'd be able to kind of make sure that your practice reflects the needs of customers and the constant changing of customers and their businesses and their requirements if you're not listening to them. If you don't have a program in place to pay attention to their feedback, or at least seek their feedback and listen to it and kind of action it, then what's going to happen is your model will atrophy over time. It won't reflect the needs of your customer community. So I see it as the VOC has to be right up at the top. Like, it's got to be one of the core pieces of your overall customer success practice. And you asked about how they could start on the journey. You can start small. I think you can start in the really kind of a conventional way, which is just doing a few random kind of customer interviews, do some roundtables or focus groups to kind of share with your customers, these people, what you're doing and what you're thinking about doing, and get their feedback on that. And I think that's a really good way of starting to get some sort of a proof that the way you're thinking resonates with the market. And then you expand. Then you expand on targeted surveys. But at that point, you want to establish a program, and you want to start using some automation to really collect at a bigger, more scalable way feedback from customers. And ultimately, you want to start having that program expand to include looking at what I call kind of listening posts or signals for the customer's kind of sentiment. So, and this is more sophisticated, where you kind of plug it into your health score and see how the customers are reacting to the service that you're providing, and there's ways you can pick up how they're feeling about that through data. And so that's a really kind of expansive view of voice of the customer. But again, you can start small, just by talking human to human, and I think that's a valid way to get rolling on it.
Absolutely, and I think the customers also feel great when they're listened to, when someone actually listens to them. So
Yeah.
that's really great to know. So this is so when these organizations have to start this VOC journey from scratch, how can they do that?
Well, that's what I mean, is that I think they can just have a leader, assign someone who's going to kind of own the program. And even if it's just one or two people, I think they can start by looking at the list of customers and saying, we want to pick out a representative customer from each kind of market or each kind of segment that we're serving through our company, and by picking a sampling of customers, you get you'll get a more accurate kind of representation of the perception of your service. And I think you want to make sure that the questions you're posing to them are limited. You don't want to ask too many questions. You don't want to take up too much of their time, but you want to ask meaningful questions. And it's often, how do you perceive the service you're getting from the company? What are your perceptions of the product? What are your perceptions of the individual who's serving you? So you want to get kind of a layered kind of view of how they're perceiving the entire experience with you. And even I've gone so far as to basically talk about the whole life cycle. I ask them about their thoughts and impressions about the sales side, even before customer success enters the picture. I want to explore how they're feeling about the company and the brand and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like by offering up questions around their experience, you get a better overall picture of how they're feeling about you as a partner, like the company, I mean, and also where customer success fits into that. So customer success is it an outlier? Is it seen as superior to the rest of the company of your companies? touch points, or is it inferior? And then you can kind of probe on, okay, where are we lacking and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I would recommend for companies to get started. Take it seriously, because you really actually do want to get that feedback. If you're serious about improving your service and your product, then you have to be talking to the customers in some form or another.
Absolutely, that's really great. So, when you've conducted so many talks on customer success, so what do you think? Which is the most neglected thing when it comes to customer success? Is it the implementation or the planning? And where do companies generally go wrong?
I would say what we're just talking about is the voice of the customer, but I would take it a little bit further. It's the voice of the customer and a programmatic connection to the product. I think that's where most companies fall short. Is they may I think a lot of companies, probably the majority of companies, don't take voice of the customer that seriously, so they don't put enough energy into a commitment to it, and so it becomes kind of something that you put on the back burner, as we call it, until some later date. And by then, you've already made decisions around the service model and the people, and you're not sure. Actually, if you're honest with yourself, you're not sure if what you're doing is making any sense to the customers. And then, moreover, I think once you establish voice of the customer, it has to be programmatically plugged into the product, because that's how the product can get infused with really vital information from the customer in a regular way, in a way that forces the product development teams to pay attention and to say, okay, we think we're doing it the right way, but this data is coming in from the customer that kind of conflicts with the way we think, and that's important. And I think customer success program for us, the customer, can be a hugely valuable way for companies to improve their prospects in the market. Without that connection, I think it's really, really difficult. And I would say, to answer that question, I would say what's most neglected is that combination of voice of the customer and the connection to the product. When I say connection, I mean kind of more of a programmatic connection, not some sort of ad hoc thing that gets addressed once in a while.
That's a really, really great point. So now that we spoke about feedback, so how can we build a customer engagement model, and how do we incorporate this feedback into the model and keep improvising on this model?
Mhm. So as I mentioned earlier about the charter, I think that's how you start, is establishing amongst the senior executives. So my belief is, and I've talked to a lot of executives and a lot of companies, the ones who fail at customer success or really, really struggle are those where the decisions are only made by the leader of customer success. And the ones that are most successful are the ones that go through that extra effort to align the senior executives, get their points of view. What do you guys all expect? What do you people all expect from customer success? What do you think they should be doing? And then you get alignment. If the whole company, if all the senior executives decide, well, we want customer success to focus on selling and really growing our accounts, then that's the way it should be. And so then you develop an engagement model accordingly. I personally disagree that should be the focus of customer success, but maybe your company is different. And so in any event, I think the charter needs to be established first. And once it's established, then you have all the kind of the solid foundation for building the engagement model, because that should dictate what kind of the profile of the people you'll be hiring into the roles, and what sort of initiatives are you going to put in place in terms of delivery. Like, is it going to be really high touch, a lot of customer human interaction, or are you going to kind of leverage more technology to kind of touch more customers? And so and so the whole engagement model needs to be kind of nuanced if you're really going to do a good job at it, and look at segmentation and figure out which customers do you want to pay more attention to or should require more attention, and which other ones can still be successful but with a different kind of an approach. So I think to build a customer engagement model, you really have to start with that solid foundation of the charter and the agreement across the executive team that there is a certain set of expectations for customer success. Because if that's missing, um, this customer success team will really mightily struggle to satisfy everybody, because everyone will keep coming at them saying, "Well, you should be doing this and you should be doing that," and it's gonna slow them down.
Absolutely. And this charter would also change depending on the geography of the company or the
Mhm.
customers, correct?
Yes, yeah, I agree, and the geography, yeah, for sure. It all depends on what are they trying to do with the market, and also you asked about the incorporating feedback, so to improvise the model, yeah, and that's a really great aspect, and a great question to ask, because it's important that um, the customer success model, continually be tweaked or looked at and examined to figure out whether it's still meeting the needs of the customers, but also your company itself, because the company again has expectations of the service and hopes for the service, and what are the outcomes that it needs for its investment in customer success. And so the model continually needs to be looked at and examined. And how do you infuse it with intelligence? Well, voice of the customer for one thing, but you also listen to the CSMs and get their feedback. So it's like voice of the employee. I think these two kind of programs can work together to provide the model with the kind of information it needs to really continually refine itself and iteratively improve. We do that. We have a voice of the employee program that is really vital for. I'm on the strategy team, so we have input coming from the CSMs, all at the same time we're listening to the voice of the customer, and we kind of correlate the data, figure out, okay, what is it really telling us? This collection of information.
That's really great, Peter. So, moving on to my next question, how can customer success drive customer retention, and what can we do to avoid churn?
So when I think of retention and churn, um, I see it in terms of how customer success can influence these things. I see it as, is the customer feeling they're getting the kind of attention and the right quality of service to get to reach the value they want from the product, um, and so that can vary. So I think it's important to when the customer buys the product, to ensure that they know that the vendor, you're there with them in some form, um, to help them along the way. And so the worst scenario is when the customer buys the product, they may get introduced to an organization called customer success, but they don't really hear much from them. They're not really that helpful. And then retention period or the renewal period comes, and that is so annoying for a customer to be asked, okay, are you going to renew, when they've not received the attention they need to see the value from the product. And so, how can customer success drive retention? You have to pay attention. You have to put in place the right program, success plan. Again, it depends on the segmentation. It could be more of an automated thing, or it could be really high touch, a lot of human to human interaction. Whatever it is, the customer at the other end needs to feel that they're getting what they need, and if they get what they need, then the renewal will be less of an event, and that's what you want. And also, customer success should be setting up the renewal all along the way, getting in place the right sort of proof points, so that when the renewal is about to happen, whoever is doing the renewal, it's typically the sales organization, has the information they need about the customer, so that the renewal again becomes a non-event. And that's what you really want. You want that reduction in friction, so that the renewal just kind of happens and the customer stays with you because they're getting value all along the way.
Absolutely. And so, when it comes to organizations who haven't kept customer success on priority, how do we implement this solution for them?
Well, then I think then someone needs to, if they feel like that's really missing, and usually be a senior leader, they've got to start building a business case for why this should matter to the company, why it matters that customer success should be a fully established kind of formal practice, because by not having it in place, this is why we're struggling with kind of a low retention. We're churning a lot of customers, or when they stay with us, they're reducing their investment, and it's because they're not seeing the value that they're expecting when they buy the product. So there needs to be a kind of a service in place that helps them realize that value. And if you're a senior leader, that's not a really difficult business case. I think you just put together the numbers of of what the current situation is. Retention is this level, there's a high churn rate, but if you put in place a service, you can there's research out there, there's tons of research that shows having a customer success service in place will demonstrably improve retention and lower churn. And so I would just say, if you're missing that, put together the business case, present the case to the senior executives, make sure you get that alignment, establish the charter, and keep moving. You know.
Absolutely. So before we wind up with the interview, Peter, are there any sound bites you'd like to leave our
But
audience with?
yeah, I would just say, because I've talked a lot about the steps of establishing a charter and having the right plans in place and all that. I would just say the soundbite for me would be, just don't skip any steps. Customer success really has to be methodically built, methodically managed, methodically tuned. And you can, and especially in my opinion, when it comes to the voice of the customer, and people skip it all the time, don't skip that step. Don't skip any steps, because there's lots. We've been at this business now in almost 20 years in customer success, so lots of people have done it. Lots of people have tried it. There's lots of lessons learned that people should be embracing, and try not to rush to that end, because you'll probably end up tripping and falling. Customers will feel it. You may actually impact your customers' willingness to stay with you. And ultimately, you're going to have to circle back anyways and close those gaps. So just don't skip any steps.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Peter, for this. Thank you so much for giving us your time, your
Oh,
insightful
you're
time.
welcome, Chandy. This was a lot of fun talking with you.
Yes. And I know this interview is going to be really, really insightful for our audience.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll be back with a new episode and a whole new expert soon. So stay tuned and we'll see you around for the next one. Thank you.